Greetings and welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm glad to have you here. Before we begin, please take a moment to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and maybe drop us a comment down below. It all helps feed the algorithm. And while you're at it, go ahead and go over and check us out over on Patreon. Lots of cool stuff going on over there. Okay, and a shout out to my Tier 4 patrons, Russ of the Frozen North, Neo5AC, and Nick. Thank you very much. Now, on with the story. The Deathworlders, a story by Philip R. Johnson, a.k.a. Hambone, Hambone HFY, and Hambone 3110. Chapter 22, Warhorse, Part 4, The Fourth Year, Part 1. Date point, 8 years, 1 month AV, Huntsville, Alabama, USA, Earth. Major Owen Powell.
All right, SOR O-Plan Session 5. Before we get started, does anybody have any new insight or new thoughts that they'd like to add to our existing O-Plans?
The lads shook their heads. Planning sessions were a moment for Powell to pick his men's brains, and he relished them. The lads knew their own capabilities best, and they were all intelligent men. If they didn't have any concerns to raise after last week, then that was good.
Right.
Powell checked his notes. O-Plan sessions were also a relaxed affair. They were done round table, more or less as equals. Another reason to enjoy them.
So today, we're planning for a Cameron White scenario.
Who what now? Akiyama asked. Powell clicked the control for the slideshow he'd prepared.
This evil fucker, Cameron White. Serial killer, sadist, and generally charming bloke. Cortai abducted him right out of the prison yard during his exercise break. Sparked quite the fucking manhunt and an inquiry. Nothing came of him, of course, because at the time no one knew we needed to be thinking about alien abductions.
A list of White's crimes filled the whole slide, and the two after it.
Dead nowadays, but not before he terrorized the orbital shipyards at Erbzurk and killed dozens of ETs. Obviously, we can't allow scenarios like this in the future, if for no other reason than it makes the rest of us look bad.
The lads nodded.
So, the scenario is, a psychotic human is loose on a space station killing ETs. We can assume that by the time we go in, Intel have figured out who they are, what they look like, etc. Our job will be to preferably capture him, subdue if possible, kill if necessary. Avoid or minimize non-human casualties.
Fast and hard's our best bet, then, Price suggested. Vandenberg nodded. I'm inclined to agree. Longer we delay in that situation, the more time our Mr. White has to do his thing.
Aye,
Powell agreed.
But my concern there is that if we get a corridor full of lots of panicking ETs, so our aggressor's going to have his work cut out for him getting down to it at speed without splattering them.
Guess you've never played rugby, sir, Legsy commented.
How so?
Running forward really fast and dodging everything's a winger's job.
That was your job, was it?
Nope, I was a lock.
Or in football, that job would go to a wide receiver or a tight end, Blazinski added. I used to play tight end for my school team.
The four Brits, even Powell, gave him an amused look.
We don't wish to know about your tight end, Starfall,
the Major deadpanned. Blazinski just rolled his eyes at the chuckle that shimmered round the table, though he joined in.
Understood, sir. Point is, I used to do something like that all the time, so it should be doable. Might be something we should factor into training.
Aye, good shout.
Powell made a note.
So the spearhead is an aggressor who's trained in agility and motion. Burgess, find out how we can fit that training into the routine.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to say that we want at least 2 spearheads. Hit on Mr. White from multiple directions. Preferably 3,
Powell added. What's everyone else do while the spearhead's charging in? Firth asked as Baseball nodded and scribbled down some of the changes to the training regime.
Minimizing ET loss of life and limb, Stevenson replied.
Right,
Powell nodded.
That's the defender's job. Get in the way, screen them from harm, and distract Mr. White so the aggressors can get up on him. Engineer some cover and clear the exits. Protectors, meanwhile, will be clearing the civilians out, tending to any wounded. All of that should be covered by your existing training and jobs.
Engineering cover would go quick and smooth if we could get our hands on some of those Gowan shield stick things, sir, Akiyama said. I reckon we can do better, Sykes commented. Them things are small and light enough for ETs. I reckon we could rig up a deployable shield generator of our own. Heck, get me the emitter and capacitors. I could build one, sure, Akiyama agreed. I've got the rest of what I need on my bench in the workshop.
So, who's going to carry it? Vandenberg asked.
Hump and stuff's usually Warhorse's job, Sykes drawled. Adam looked up. He'd been looking through the training plan Burgess was writing rather than at it. Powell frowned at him.
You paying attention, Ares?
Yes, sir. Humping the shield generator. Adam sat up. So, who's carrying the big stretcher for the Governor Ag patients? Oh, yeah. We're gonna need that, aren't we? Sykes rubbed his jaw. Burgess?
Baseball didn't look up. Sure, who's carrying the stasis bags?
Akiyama chuckled. You want it so much? Looks like you're carrying it yourself, Calvin, he said, using Sykes' first name.
Powell jotted another note.
Right. We'll break it up for a few minutes. You lot go get some light PT in. Restore your focus and we'll keep planning the scenario after. Akiyama, draw me up a plan for the shield generator.
There was a muttered circle of, yes, sir, and everyone stood up to go. As they did so, Legsy caught Powell's eye and aimed a small nod towards Ares, asking an unspoken question. There was a subtlety to military etiquette in such situations. Being a CO carried weight, and the more he applied that weight, the more heavily it bore down on the men lower on the chain. So Powell just feigned disinterest and turned his attention to his paperwork, not wanting to step in where he wasn't needed. They had both noticed the problem, and he'd worked with Legsy long enough to know that the matter would be dealt with competently. He paid oblique attention, though, as Legsy tapped Ares on the shoulder on their way out, and the ensuing conversation was perfectly audible through the door. Looked like your attention was flagging there, mate, he heard. Yeah, sorry, just nothing, mate, Legsy replied. We need to stay on top of it when we're off our game, and that means you need to stay on top of it too. Understand? I know you just saw Ava again. You miss her. But you've got to deal with it at the proper time, eh? Not on the old man's. Yeah, right. Sorry. Come on, let's get that PT done. Powell nodded a little satisfied smile and sat back, allowing himself the luxury of putting his boots up on the table. It was mildly worrying that Ares had showed any kind of distraction like that. The lad was usually so dependable that he might as well have been nicknamed Workhorse. But then again, romantic troubles could throw anybody off. Legsy had handled him well, though, and would doubtless continue to do so. There was no real cause for concern from a professional point of view. From a personal one... Date point. 8 years, 2 months AV. London, England. Earth. Sean Harvey. It was Sarah's turn. Okay, so the black card is... She drew one and read it. My hobby. Introducing unexpected aliens to the joys of blank. The table rattled as 3 white cards were slammed down on it, and Ben cursed. According to one of Sean's house rules, whoever got their card down last had to take a drink. Given that they'd now been playing for more than an hour, all 4 of them were pretty well drunk by now. Ben sipped his beard while Ava shuffled the white cards they'd played. Okay, so my hobby is introducing unexpected aliens to the joys of a big black dick. Charlotte giggled. She was probably the drunkest, and her poker face wasn't exactly impenetrable at the best of times. Introducing aliens to the joys of fatal sex adventures. Everyone cringed aloud, giving little outraged laughs. And introducing aliens to the joys of the clitoris. She put the last card down. What is with you guys and sex cards? Oh, come on. You're the one who played fucking in zero gravity last round, Ben told her. Come on, choose. Ava laughed and swigged her drink. Well, I mean, hey, how can I pass up on the joys of the clitoris? Ben cheered and raised his hand, but Charlotte giggled again as the black card was handed to him. Darling, I never knew you went that way, she exclaimed, pantomiming shock. Oh, the truth is out. Ava turned in her seat and looked Charlotte in the eye with a barely restrained laugh threatening to burst out of her. It's true. I'm a raging dyke for you, my love. Shaking with mirth, Charlotte reached over and put a delicate hand on her cheek. All this time, we've been denying the obvious. Ava reached up and took Charlotte's hand in her own, affecting a mournful expression. We can't, darling. What if your boyfriend finds out? He'd never approve.
Ben put up his hand. Yeah, I would.
No, if we're doing that, then to keep it fair, you have to make out with Sean, Charlotte said. Oi, I'm a 21st century man. I'm cool with that, Sean shrugged. Yeah? Dare you? Ava said. I thought we were playing Cards Against Humanity, not Truth or Dare. Chicken? Right, that fucking does it. Come on, Ben. Ben glanced sideways at his girlfriend, who just grinned at him. Go on.
What's in it for us? Ben demanded.
Charlotte just waggled her eyebrows across the table. Ava? Ava hesitated, and Sean was just about to turn the idea down when she surprised all of them by nodding. Okay, sure. To Sean, that sounded like alcohol-fueled bravado rather than actual enthusiasm. You sure? He asked. He should have known better. Ava gave him her best glare, and he could see her summon her determination. Are you? Ha! Sean rolled his eyes. Then to Ben, come on, mate. Ben laughed rigidly, then steeled himself, downed the last of his beer, and shuffled round the table. There was an awkward moment of hesitation. Then they just went for it. Sean had never kissed a dude before, but had been idly curious about it for a while. Actually doing it turned out to be just a kiss. There was a little bit of scratchy stubble involved, but lips were lips. No tongue involved. No big deal in the end. One to scratch off his list of life experiences. Charlotte had clearly enjoyed it and fanned herself with her hand. Phew! Ava nodded, having gone decidedly red around the nose and cheeks herself, then shot a nervous glance at Charlotte. So, our turn. Charlotte seemed happy about it at least. And keep it fair, Ben added, having surreptitiously wiped his mouth. You owe us the same as you got. Ava nodded. She looked Charlotte in the eye again, swigged her drink, laughed nervously, and then squeaked a little when Charlotte rolled her eyes and hauled Ava towards her by the front of her shirt. A few aesthetically pleasing seconds later, Ava just made a stunned little, huh, noise as they parted. Sean chuckled. Not as big a deal as you thought it would be. I guess not, Ava agreed, then cleared her throat. Can we, whose go is it? Ben. Ben seemed to come to his senses a little. Huh? Your black card, mate. Oh, in space, only two things are constant. Corti abductions and blank. The three white cards slapped the table, and this time Ava had to take a drink, which seemed to help her a bit. They made it through three black cards after that, and when only two white cards hit the table, and when they looked back at Charlotte, she turned out to have fallen asleep. Guess that's game over then, Ben commented. We okay to stay here tonight, Sean? Sure. Spare beds made. Cheers. Ben gently extracted Charlotte from behind the table and helped her towards the stairs. She made sleepy little protest noises the whole way. Who won? Ava asked. You did, Sean grinned at her. Turns out our innocent country girl got the dirtiest mind of us all. She laughed and stretched. Am I okay to stay here tonight, too? Sure, if you don't mind the couch. Thanks. She stood up, leaned back with her hands on her hips, and sighed at the ripple of little pops that shot up her spine before sitting down on the couch with the rest of her drink in hand. She brushed some hair out of her face and stared at the wall opposite thoughtfully. Sean sat beside her and studied her expression for a second. She didn't seem to notice. You okay? Yeah, I just... Her frown didn't vanish, but she made eye contact. Was that weird? Just a bit of harmless fun, Sean reassured her. I don't know. A kiss is just a kiss. I didn't think it was a big deal. He chuckled. Besides, What was that you said at New Year's about fucking nudity not being a big deal? Something like, a body's just a body? Huh. Oh, yeah, I guess you're right, she conceded and tucked her feet up underneath herself, resting her arm on the back of the couch so she could comfortably face towards him a little bit. So, what, you remember that whole conversation? Kind of hard not to. You were kind of naked at the time. Ava scoffed. No more than I am right now. You weren't wearing clothes, though. Yeah, but you couldn't see anything. Hell, you could see less than you can see right now. She gestured to her chest and a little bit of decollage that she had on show. I guess, but... Sean thought about how to phrase his thoughts. But what? I could have. You were only behind the curtain. So? So, what if I don't know, pulled the curtain aside? Eva adjusted her posture a bit, turning to face him even more. You wouldn't, though. Well, no, you're right. I wouldn't, Sean agreed. Why not? Well, He thought about it some more, sipping his beer to cover the delay. I guess, well, it'd be... Well, for the same reason I'm not going to just try and rip your clothes off right now. Exactly, Ava said. If you'd done something like that, I'd have punched you in the face, left the house, and you'd have lost me as a friend. And probably Charlotte and Ben, too. Sean finished his beer and resolved that it was his last. The whole world was more than a little fuzzy and swirly. Even in his drink-addled condition, he knew that if he'd had one more, it'd be too many and result in vomit. Besides, he felt certain there was some kind of valid counter-argument to what Ava was saying, but it was impossible to think what it might be past the drunk. But the shower curtain thing would have been easier, he ventured. Yeah, but it's not about what's easy, is it? Ava swigged the last of her own drink. It's about that it'd be wrong. And I like you, Sean, and I trust you. I'm trusting you right now, just by being here with you. I guess I've never thought of it that way, Sean admitted. Girls have to think of it that way, Ava shrugged. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm fitter than you are, and maybe a bit stronger even, so I've got that to back me up. But everything is like, you have to try and judge how safe you are. So you trust me enough to take a shower while I'm in the room? Yeah, you're a good guy, and like I said, I like you. I hadn't seen you for a couple of weeks. I wanted to catch up. Well, fair enough. Sean gave up on his search for a counter-argument and instead raised his empty bottle. To being comfortable. Damn right. She tapped her own bottle to his, then leaned shakily forward and set it down on the coffee table with the exaggerated care of the thoroughly intoxicated. As she did so, the thought crept into Sean's inebriated brain that maybe he'd said the wrong thing there. I've not hurt that trust, have I? Hurt how? By thinking of the curtain thing. She shook her head. No, you're asking what the rules are, right? When he nodded, she nodded too. Well, that's fine. It shows you, respect boundaries and stuff. That you respect me. ¿Tú entiendes? Sean nodded, then sat in silence for a bit. Maybe it was the booze doing the thinking, but he had a few questions he'd been itching to answer for a while, and now seemed like as good an opportunity as any to ask them. So, let's say we went swimming, he said. Yeah? In a lake or something. Sure. You're telling me that there'd be less of a problem for you than, say, kissing Charlotte. Well, Ava fidgeted, I shouldn't have done that. I mean, I know it wasn't anything, but I don't know. She rubbed her face and got some hair out of the way. It's like, if you're swimming, then really a swimsuit is just, like, this nasty lump of wet cloth that you have to take home with you when you're done. And it turns out they're pretty nasty bacteria traps, too. And, people take their clothes off for showers and baths all the time. Or the doctor or something. So, Know what? That's what a kiss is for. It's for love or sex. Nudity doesn't have to be. Erotic? Right, erotic. Kisses are automatically erotic. Nudity isn't. You feeling guilty about that, then? I'm feeling like I should feel guilty, Ava sighed. I don't know. I had fun tonight. Going outside my comfort zone a bit it's thrilling, and it really was just fun and nothing else, so maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe, Sean agreed. Yeah, I think I am, Ava said. I mean, it's not like I kissed you. Sean paused, his mind suddenly splitting into three parts. One was imagining exactly that scenario and desperately trying to figure out how to make it happen. Another was wondering exactly what she'd meant by that, and a third was detachedly watching the panic in the other two and the way his pulse had kicked up a notch. True, he said cautiously. Ava was blushing. I didn't mean it like, she began. I mean, I just, you know how you feel about me? Yeah, but that's out there. We've established those boundaries, haven't we? Right, we're good, Ava nodded. I'm comfortable with that. You're comfortable with knowing she interrupted him. Yeah. You're sure? She laughed a little, then cleared her throat and unnecessarily tidied some of the hair away again. I do too. Ave, we'd better go to sleep. No, come on. You can't just drop that one on me and expect... Sean! She cut him off. After he just stared at her patiently for a few seconds, she sighed. Okay, you want more? Fine. If I was single, we'd have hooked up months ago, okay? But I'm not. So why even tell me? Because I'm drunk, and that was probably a bad idea. She unfolded her legs and stood up. Just forget I said it. Right, Sean drew the word out. Got to save the world by making yourself miserable. Did you mean to sound so bitter just then? Well, how am I supposed to sound? He demanded. The girl I'm crazy about just told me she's into me too, but she is still loyal to the guy she never sees. How am I supposed to not be bitter about that? Because it's not so simple as I never see him, Ava retorted. Even if I didn't have all those letters telling me how much the thought of me keeps him going, we went through everything together. I'm not just going to throw that away. I know, Sean sighed. You're not a quitter. That's one of the things I like about you. But you're still asking me to... No, Sean stood up this time. Where have I even once suggested in this conversation that you should quit on him? That's your choice. So you're saying I should choose? Sean sagged and sat down again. I don't know what I'm saying. I just want you to be happy, that's all. Ava blinked at him, then leaned over and gave him a hug. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, too. I don't want these things to be complicated here, he said. I care about you. I know, and you know. Yeah. She gave him a squeeze again and then sat back. We should sleep. Sean nodded, stood up, and opened the big sea chest that had once been his great-grandfather's, which lived in the bay window and was where he kept the blankets and pillows for anyone who was sleeping on the couch. You gonna be okay? If I'm lucky, I won't remember making a fool of myself in the morning, she said, laughing a little desperately. You didn't, he promised her. Who knows, maybe clearing the air like that'll help us figure things out, you know? Maybe. He handed her the blankets. Good night, Ava. Night. He nodded, turned off the light for her, trudged upstairs, and threw himself into the bed, where he lay and stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars and planets that his own grandfather had stuck on the ceiling to turn it into a little boy's bedroom. When he woke in the morning, it came as a surprise to him that he'd managed to fall asleep at all. Date point: 8 years, 4 months AV. Huntsville, Alabama, USA, Earth. Adam Ades. Tuesdays were acclimation days. On paper, they looked like the easiest day on the schedule. The SOR had a light little PT first thing in the morning to limber them up and then wake them for breakfast. And then, nothing. A day full of free self-improvement time, where they were encouraged to pursue whatever creative or educational pursuits they liked. Rebar spent it playing around in the workshop, making little metal sculptures or structures. Sykes was always nearby, working on his pets, a small flotilla of drones of various sizes, from the little buzzy one the size of a quarter right up to Dronezilla, which he had originally assembled from scratch using 4 electric chainsaw motors, but which nowadays flew under the unreliable power of 4 temperamental homemade kinetic thrusters, the tuning and troubleshooting of which seemed to give him no end of fun. Baseball read trauma journals and medical textbooks, working towards a full nursing qualification. Legsy, Murray, and Price had all taken to collecting little miniature fantasy armies and painting them, practicing their fine dexterity by competing to see who could paint theirs most realistically. Adam sewed. He had figured out early on that the Odyssean gains he was going to make in terms of muscle during this training would, sooner or later, make it hard to find clothing that would fit, and seeing as he'd learned to sew in his medic training, it had only made sense for him to translate those skills into modifying his clothes so he wouldn't have to wear huge douchebaggy wife beaters and shorts day in and day out. He would have cut a comical sight anyways, he knew. He wasn't a tall man, but here he was, getting legitimately huge nowadays, and the sight of somebody so big sewing would have seemed odd anyways. The fact that he was doing it while wearing a $20 million armored spacesuit was just completed the picture. That was Acclimation Day, light self-improvement activities while wearing the spacesuit. On the face of it, simple. In practice, merely wearing the suit was exhausting, and Acclimation days were about the hardest thing on the schedule. They had to wear EV masks for 12 hours straight and try to behave otherwise normally. Whether they were eating, reading, welding, painting little miniatures, or operating a sewing machine, they had to do all of it while wearing a pressure suit that was designed to use mechanical counterpressure rather than atmosphere to guard them from decompression. The first few times had been agonizing. Nowadays, they were merely tiring, and the worst part was boredom. After years of consuming and burning per day more calories than most people went through in a week, just sitting around was torturous. Every so often, one of the guys had to get up and do something physical for a bit. The result was that usually wrestling or a race around the building or a who can throw the medicine ball further competition or just beating the shit out of a punching bag, they didn't last long. With the suit on, such bursts of activity were concentrated and rapidly burned off the pent-up energies, driving them back to their gentler pursuits. The impressive part was how well Major Powell had adjusted. He almost looked the most comfortable of all amongst them. Though how much of that was an act so as to protect the appearance of invulnerability was a subject of constant barrack speculation. Certainly he strolled around in the suit rather than thumping gracelessly about like most of the rest of the operators did, which all by itself suggested that his apparent ease with the EV mass was more than just acting. He told them to stop leaping to attention when he entered the dormitory, though. Merely standing was sufficient, which they all did the second the door opened and he sauntered in. He nodded around at them.
Afternoon, lads. Fall in.
Everyone did so, each wondering what the break from the routine was about.
So, I've got some news, Powell told them. You might like this, Ares. HMS Shaman on Cimbrian has just been selected as the permanent home of the SOR.
Adam grinned and made a little success fist pull.
Now for the other half, Powell continued. We've got a C5 coming down from Maine to take us up to Scotch Creek. It's scheduled to fly day after tomorrow, and we need every scrap of our equipment and gear and personal effects packed up and ready to load onto that thing as soon as it's on the tarmac. Acclimation Day is therefore cancelled immediately. We're all getting out of these suits right now and returning them for cleaning and transport. You lot are the strongest here, so PT for the next couple of days is going to consist of doing all the heavy lifting.
Everyone nodded their understanding. It made sense. There was no point in missing valuable training time during the move when the move itself could pull double duty.
Go on.
The team hustled out, Adam amongst them. Well, I'm really happy to be heading back there, sir. Why Cimbrian? He asked.
Funny thing about Cimbrian,
Powell told him.
You know we've actually got better strategic control over that system than we do over Sol?
We do?
Aye. We, meaning the treaty nations, for starters. Cimbrians, legally it's still a bit dodgy where the colony sits. If it's its own nation or a British colony, or an overseas territory or whatever. But it's definitely allied. No Russians, no Chinese, or what have you. No other humans trying to fly in our skies. It's either ours or it's alien. Second, he added, less hiding places. Sol's packed full of fucking nooks and crannies. Asteroids, Saturn's rings, more fucking moons than I could count if I ordered every man here to go barefoot. We don't know what's lurking around our own home system. Hell, you know the Dominion had a research station around Saturn for years without us noticing.
Cimbrians more open?
Aye, no asteroid belt. One gas giant and a bloody gigantic one at that. But it's only got the 5 moons and no ring. And the other planets are all... they're not exactly your holiday resort destination. No way to build a listening post there without us noticing.
Adam held the door for him as they entered the suit maintenance building.
Then there's the citizens, Powell continued. Nobody works on Cimbrian who has any implants in their brains. We've got total control over who gets onto that planet. Everyone's accounted for, and everyone's clean. Zero hierarchy, guaranteed. And so long as the system shields up, and we have no reason to drop it, none are getting down either.
Plus, Cimbrian's where the ships are, Legsy commented.
True, Powell shrugged. But that's politics and OPSEC more than anything else. Their reaction time to Earth orbit's pretty much the same as for Cimbrian. So they're posted at Cimbrian A, because it keeps the Russians and China happy, and B, because our intelligence is more secure there.
Doyle and Hargreaves were waiting at Adams Station with the hose. The hose was always capitalized because the hose was important. His job was to pump ice-cold water through the EV mass undersuit, cooling the wearer to the point that the heat-activated inner layer of the midsuit stopped squeezing and the suit could be removed. A few months of experiments with alcohol and antifreeze had allowed them to actually pump in water that was below 0 Celsius, securing a fairly quick release. From the perspectives of the suit's wearer, this was initially a blessing. The water in the suit system was invariably lukewarm, burdened as it was with transporting the body heat of a big, muscular, active man. The cold water felt at first only pleasantly cool. Then it got cold. Then freezing. The worst part was that when it got into the plumbing around the groin, though by that point the operator was invariably shivering and hissing through his teeth anyways. All things considered, removing the EV mass managed the wonderful trick of being even less fun than squeezing into it, and was the reason why the suiting up room had a rack of hot showers on standby. Staff Sergeant Lazarenko had installed a clothes dryer for good measure, in which the towels were kept hot until ready for use, an act that had earned him the immediate and undying gratitude of all the operators,
and a bloody good thinking, that man,
from Powell.
Speaking of the ships,
the Major continued, probably so as to distract himself from the chill,
we've got ourselves a ride to go with the new digs. After the freighter rescue, the Admiralty decided that HMS Caledonia and HMS Myrmidon needed refitting, and those fancy ET Tech cloaking devices of theirs could be put to better use.
So they're our ride now? Firth asked.
Caledonia is.
Powell gritted his teeth as the water really started to get cold and forged ahead.
They converted those big flight decks of hers, sealed one of them up entirely, compartmentalized it. Now it's a hospital, good for humans and aliens. The other deck's for us lot to use as a forward operating base.
And Myrmidon? Adam asked.
Her flight decks have been completely sealed up and filled with capacitor banks, Powell said. The idea is for her to serve as a flying battery for the Type 2s. Give 'em...
Adam knew exactly why he hesitated. The cold was biting now. They were nearly at suits off.
Some actual staying power, rather than having to jump out every few minutes to recharge off a nearby star. Now Myrmidon can,
He swallowed and shivered.
Can keep 'em topped up.
Suit off, Major, Powell's lead tech said. Powell nodded and fumbled at the touchscreen mounted on the inside of his wrist, entering the suit release code with shaking fingers. "Suit off, Warhorse," Hargreaves echoed, and Adam nodded, glad to follow Powell's example. He entered the code, the pelvic seal disengaged, and he leaned forward and thrust his arms over his head. Doyle reached up from behind to disconnect the hoses and moved around the front and wriggled his fingers down either side of Adam's head to protect his ears. Hargreaves braced a foot on his desk and heaved. Adam pulled backwards, and in an instant of relief that was almost orgasmic, the suit's torso popped off him in a rush. After that, getting out of the suit's legs was easy. Adam had only to lie down. A yoga mat had been brought in for exactly that purpose. Thrust his legs in the air, let the text take his ankles, lift his butt off the floor, and then point his toes as Doyle and Hargreaves hauled on the suit, which again slithered off him to his profound relief. As Doyle muscled the two suit halves back into place on their rack, Hargreaves hooked up the wastewater hose and activated the suction, draining the undersuit's water conduits in about 20 seconds, which Adam used to remove his neck brace, and that was it. The hard part was over. The undersuit, sadly, was single-use. It may have been the cheapest part of the whole rig, but it still felt kind of wrong to have to destroy something that cost as much as a television in order to get out of it, which he did with the help of the techs and their safety blades, which hooked over the suit's material and sliced easily through it from the collar to the wrist, and then back up from the wrist to armpit, and then down the waist. Adam had salvaged some of the discarded undersuit fabric for what the guys constantly referred to as his dressmaking. The rest of the disrobing process fell to Adam, who wasted no time in getting out of the constricting and freezing cold garment as quickly as he could. He'd been amused at first how awkward some of the guys were over their resulting nudity. Sure, some of the techs were women, but in the SOR's case, the military's innate pragmatism had won out over the military's innate conservatism. The technicians needed to be, in academic and technical terms, every bit as highly trained and high-achieving as the operators themselves. That high bar of entry had forced them to take whoever was qualified without regard to gender. As ever, the stress, uncertainty, and review hearings had all turned out to be a waste of time. The enlisted personnel just got on with their jobs. Besides, the sheer joy and lightness of no longer being squeezed by upwards of 100 pounds of spacesuit was too liberating for him to have cared, even if lake swimming on Cimbrian had cured him of that particular obsolete taboo years ago. He was entirely unself-conscious nowadays, even if some of the others weren't yet. Doyle and Hargreaves returned his high fives and then got on with cleaning and maintaining the suit as Adam hit the showers. This bit was always luxury time. Not even Powell seemed to have the willpower to resist the hot water and a warm towel. And in any case, it was probably good for the muscles to get some thorough massage and relaxation before moving on to anything else. None of the guys spoke as they soaked. They just basked, then dried off and padded one by one back through the locker room to retrieve their working clothes.
"Right,"
Powell said as the last straggler, Stevenson, as always, was lacing up his boots.
"You've got an hour to pack your personal effects, then lunch. Then we're on to stowing all the gym equipment. I'll see you there."
The "yes, sir" sounded enthusiastic and motivated. To Adam's ears, he knew his own was. After all, he was going home. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am the Casual Deathworlder, your host, and this has been The Deathworlders, Chapter 22, Year 4, Part 1. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did, please go ahead and smash those like and subscribe buttons and drop us a comment down below and help feed our algorithm. As always, a huge shout out to my editor, Gregor. Thank you very much, buddy. I could never do this without you. Okay, and hopefully I think it should be this week as of the time, or this coming Wednesday as of the time that this video gets uploaded. We should be starting with Deathworlder Origins. So stick with us for that. That's the story of how this whole thing kind of began many, many millions of years ago. All right. Now, question, who's got the question? Oh, yes. I'm going to thank Freedom Fiend for this one. What is your favorite dinosaur? Leave your answers in the comments down below. Until next time, be safe, be well. I love you all. Bye-bye.